Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on what time you're watching this. My name's Connor from 905 Review. You're checking out our series Give This a Spin, where I recommend you guys some of my favorite albums. Today we're looking at the morbid classic Pornography from none else but The Cure. The Cure started off in mid to late 70s England as a post-punk band. However, they really struggled to hold down a consistent lineup as members were constantly arguing what sort of direction to take the band's sound in. The Cure's second and third albums saw somewhat of a departure from their punk influence, now opting for a much more gloomy and atmospheric sound. By 1982, the band had gone far off the deep end. There was constant fighting between members, constant alcohol and drug abuse, and this left the band at just 3 members: bassist Simon Gallup, drummer Lol Tolhurst, and frontman Robert Smith, who was probably at his most depressed at this time. And the end result was Pornography, maybe the band's most depraved album. With that quick intro out of the way, let's see what makes this album so bitter. Well, we do start off with the absolutely killer intro 100 Years, and the opening lines to it, the first words you hear when you put this album on, are "It doesn't matter if we all die," so it's kind of what we're in for here. Just an utterly morbid song about hopelessness and death, but it goes so damn hard, even more so with Robert Smith's pleading delivery of each and every line. The drum beat is one of my favorites of all time, and the production on it only enhances that. Then you toss in the wailing guitars too, and it makes for such a rocking tune while being so dreadful. Really just a flawless track. This is followed up with a short-term effect. Some constant pounding drums set the tone for another lowly gothic track. Much less intense than the previous one, though still very nihilistic. This song has grown on me more since my first listen of it, but even then I still can't really get behind the echoing lyrics to end each line. After this is The Hanging Gardens, the album's lone single. It was a sensible choice because of the upbeat drumming and bass lines, as well as the overall less dreary sound to it. It's not bad, but I definitely am more partial to the band's more depressing works here. And concluding the first side of our album is Siamese Twins. The opening drum rhythm gives it a cooler feel than the previous songs until the guitar chimes in with the band's signature dreary sound. Being Siamese twins is a metaphor for making love to someone. As your bodies are so close together, it's as if they're conjoined like legitimate Siamese twins. However, here, Robert Smith seems like he's singing about a negative such experience, perhaps a traumatic one. Like falling angels, the world disappeared. Opening the second side of the album with some more pounding drums, we have The Figurehead. It's another deeply gloomy song, supported by a low rumbling bass line, and one of the better tracks on here in my opinion. While it partly describes the state Robert Smith was in at the time, he's also said that the song was inspired by some freaky sculpture of a skull he found that he would also talk to. 100 other words And the song ends with a strong sense of humility, as he repeats over and over that he will never be clean again. Next is the song A Strange Day, in which Robert Smith expects the apocalypse and even embraces it. Of course, on such a depressing album, a song of this lyrical nature would be the cheeriest one here. This is then followed by the dark, eerie track Cold. Some unsettling atmospheric sound, along with their typical pounding drums, and a deep, guttural synthesizer set an incredible stage for this song. It's just a cold, harsh take on life. I'm amazed this song took some time to catch my attention because I do think it's absolutely incredible. And concluding the album is the most atmospheric track on here, the title track Pornography, starting with some distorted audio samples. It features a gleeful take on death, but even through all the depression we've heard thus far, we still end off the album with just the tiniest shred of hope. As I've mentioned before, and as you may have picked up through the lyrics, Robert Smith wasn't exactly doing so hot. He would use those feelings, or lack thereof, to create the ultimate album demonstrative of that mind space, or he was going to perish trying. So he ends the song and album singing, "I must fight this sickness and find a cure." Because just as he fought through everything he sang about, he was fighting through these through writing and singing, and I just think that's a beautiful conclusion. Oh, and even that aside, the song holds up musically as well. It might not be as easy to get into as the others due to its more experimental nature, but this one really stood out to me even from the first time I gave the album a spin. Love it for the aforementioned samples it uses, the pounding drums, as is typical for the album, the ominous synth in it, the sporadic guitar, and of course, Smith's joy-deprived singing. There are a couple variants of this album to know of, and certainly some interesting ones. An original 1982 Australian release also came with the single Charlotte Sometimes. Fiction Records, a subsidiary of Polydor and the label that Pornography was released on, had a 2-CD set of the album that also came with bonus demos and live content, as well as a red vinyl of just the standard album in 2012. They've also released many other colored vinyl variants of the album. However, for whatever reason, these are deemed as unofficial releases by the trusted and reputable album collection database Discogs. These are a 1999 picture disc of the album, 2019 releases on olive, blue, green, red, yellow, and purple vinyls, and then later a peach one. Some other interesting editions of this album are the Russian ones. In 2008, there was both a red vinyl of it and a double LP package containing the same live material that was on the Fiction Records CD package, and then said same variant only on CD instead of vinyl in 2019. Now my copy somehow ended up with a sticker on it from the label Sub Pop saying that it was a loser edition colored vinyl. I didn't get my hopes up because I didn't see any way they'd be able to attain the rights to release this, but even still, finding out that in fact it is just black and not a colored vinyl, still a little bit of a letdown. And you know what? That's a 0 out of 10 prank to whoever did that. Pornography actually fared pretty well despite the fact it only had the one single, as it would reach up to the 8th spot on the British albums chart. Contrary to this, critics weren't exactly pleased, as the album would receive some pretty unfavorable reviews. Maybe they just didn't get the introspection the lyrics were going for, because these critics addressed the overall dark nature of it, however, also called the album dull and meaningless, even pompous, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around. At least in hindsight, reviews have given it much more praise. Maybe not wanting to stew in this state for so long, and understandably so, the band would take on a more lighthearted, new wave sound in the years to come following this. I am in love with the overall sound and mood of this album. It also brings some pretty interesting nihilistic views on life and existence as a whole, and the accompanying music pairs so well with those thoughts. For that reason, I'm giving Pornography an A grading, as it is my favorite Cure album. Of course, I'm a fan of the drums, the rhythms conducted, as well as the production on them throughout the entirety of this release. Speaking of sound, the guitar and bass parts are great, as is the synth when it's used, and Robert Smith's distinct voice as well. So realistically, every component of the band. On top of that, 100 Years has to be one of their best songs, and one of the best album openers of all time. With that being said, that's been my review of The Cure's Pornography. Let me know your thoughts, and I hope to see you next time. But, before we take off, what were your thoughts on this album? Did I rate it too high or did I rate it too low? Did I get it right? Did the critics get it right? Did neither of us get it right? Let me know down below. Maybe also your thoughts on the video. Maybe also your thoughts on who I ought to cover next. And I hope to see you again sometime soon. Take it easy.